Hi everyone, I'm about to release the grades for your first case study. I want you to remember that this is sort of like the pre-assessment that I'm going to look at your revision at the end of the year, then a semester, to see your growth in your thinking about the issues presented in this case. Overall, I thought everyone really did a nice job. Some of you picked up on the similarities to situations in Nebraska where communities have experienced this rapid change or currently are going through it now. That's one of the reasons why I picked this case. A number of you also picked up on the lack of discussion about where the superintendent has been throughout this. I think that's a really good question. Given that it's a community-wide situation, we would hope to have the support from central office. But sometimes we're not that lucky, right? And so we may have to deal with some of these issues on our own. A number of you mentioned town hall style meetings with white and Latinx community members. One of the things that I study in my research is school community partnerships, and over the course of my research I've learned that trust is something that really takes a long time to develop. So I want you to think about whether that is a starting point for dealing with this, or maybe is an end goal, and that you're going to need to develop trust with individuals and with groups before you can bring them together in that way in order for it to be a constructive situation. A number of you also talked about getting parents to volunteer in schools, and something I also want you to think about as the course goes on is whether that's culturally appropriate for these parents. Not every country has the same expectations for parents engaging in school the way the U.S. does, and so asking parents to do those things may not be culturally appropriate. Let's see, and those comments kind of got me thinking about some of the research that I've read on engaging Latinx parents. Some of it is by a colleague of mine, Dr. Michael Lawson, who I've worked with in the past, and he's doing great community engagement work, and Anne Ishimaru, whose work informed my dissertation work and who I've looked up to for a long time. So I'm going to link the full articles for you if you want to read them. I think they're both easy to read and have great stuff in them. And I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. So in the Lawson and Omilda Lawson article, they start off by saying that school-focused parent engagement, that is volunteering at school, helping with homework, the sort of things that we might have grown up with our parents doing, is prioritized as the most influential, most important influence on children's achievement. And there's been a lot of studies that have shown that, even regardless of race and social class. So that's something that we want to do. We want to have parents engaged. But engaging low-income parents and diverse parents in these activities can be really challenging. There's a lot of barriers to engagement that include teachers' dispositions, as well as constraints on parents who struggle to meet their family's basic needs. Other barriers include low levels of perceived agency and confidence in navigating new systems. Social isolation and exclusion in the wider community can make it a barrier to even leave your house if you don't feel like you know people, can get around the community on your own. Low-income Latinx parents may experience these challenges, plus the challenge of speaking a language other than English, and possibly also having low levels of education in their own country of origin. We saw in the case study that some of these students were coming with low levels of literacy in Spanish. While we don't want to make assumptions about parents, it is possible that also their parents struggle with literacy in Spanish. And then there's also complications with social and cultural resources that are a mismatch for navigating mainstream American institutions. They're a different beast than schools in other countries, and so we need to remember that when we are dealing with parents who come from other cultures. They essentially assert that community-based organizations that are external to schools can provide a pathway for engagement to schools by building social networks among Latinx immigrants and their capacity to engage in schools. They also identify the needs for cultural brokers who can help create relationships across groups. In our example, someone mentioned the role of the Catholic Church as a place where both Italian and Irish folks would be engaged, as well as engaging Hispanic and Latinx immigrants. And then someone also mentioned the soccer coach as a cultural broker who could work between schools and families. So Lawson and Milda Lawson found in their study of collective engagement model using community-based organizations that in particular, Latina women who came to the U.S. illegally to be with their husbands and to provide a better life for their family had had traumatic experiences crossing the border. They also had stress from not having a social network in their new community, leaving them feeling trapped in their homes and creating a downward spiral of stress and depression. The community organization got their start by going door to door with information about the organization's activities. And they wrote that all of the parents interviewed in the study reported that the provision of these resources through door-to-door outreach and person-to-person contact helped to initially lure them to the program site for additional resources, information, and support. They also noted that there were stipends provided to participants to maintain their engagement in this organization, and they were pretty modest, $160 a month. And again, this is not coming from the school budget, this is coming from a community organization. And they also noted not only does this bring people to the table, it also went a way to alleviating financial stress. Parents were able to buy food for their children with the money. They also provided childcare for all adult activities, including parent-to-parent support groups that help members build trusting relationships. And these groups also help people discover their gifts to share with others, such as teaching skills like cooking and sewing to other parents. They also found informal ways to earn money, such as housekeeping, cooking, and cutting hair. And once they felt like they had a social network, parents appeared to engage more in the wider community. And one of the things this organization did was develop a crossing guard program that allowed parents to be there at the start of school and after school to help kids safely cross the streets. And as a result, they got to know these children. While the study doesn't really bridge to white parents in the community, it helps describe what it might take to get Latinx parents to the point where they can engage in schools in ways that we hope that they will. And then there's an additional study, Anna Ishiru, as I mentioned, and I'm going to do a brief overview of that. And again, it's linked if you want to read it. Ishiru starts by explaining that traditionally schools see themselves as the decision makers about what is best for children, who, along with their parents, are passive participants in education. They are the clients. Those who take this view often seek to educate parents to better conform to existing teacher expectations and practices, such as volunteering in the classrooms. She states when parents question educational practices, advocate for change, or otherwise do not conform to educators' expectations of passive support for the school agenda, they may be framed as obstacles to their children's success. And I think we got a little bit of that in the case study. These parents weren't doing what typical white parents in the community were doing, and so they were being labeled as obstacles to their children's success. Following a tragic accident, a district experienced a growth of Latinx parents was pressured to do something about the racism in the district, but the district felt that they didn't have the expertise or trust to do anything. A pair of individuals developed a top-down, bottom-up approach to working with Latinx parents that included developing a coalition of parents, much like the one described by Lawson and Almeida Lawson. And this coalition also worked on building skills and relationships with Latinx parents. And it's also building their networks as a form of social support. The coalition then developed a platform from which to pressure the district, although they initially had the superintendent then cut off contact with them. Under a new superintendent, the coalition was able to work with the district, and this superintendent emphasized that all of the children in the district are our children. And the coalition then worked with the district to enact changes. They developed a larger coalition that included white civic faith business and union leaders. And in order for this to work, Ishimaru suggested that Latinx parents have to be seen as experts, in this case as cultural experts, as well as bringing legitimacy and relationships to the work. And they have to be seen as being on equal footing. Working together, the district and the coalition developed mutual accountability for improving schools, and the district came to see parents not as outside of the school, but really as an internal group of stakeholders. So both of these case studies show there's no quick fix to the problems experienced by Forest Middle High School. You all provided ideas about how to go about this, and hopefully at the end of the semester you're going to have more thoughts about what to do in this case and more details about how you might do it. Likewise, you should be developing your vision and definition of equity as a guiding star for decision making, and I hope to see that in your final versions as well.